Welcome to the Cannabis Equipment News Podcast.
Hi, I'm David Manti, and welcome to a new episode of the Cannabis Equipment News Podcast. With me this week is John Hartsell, co-founder of Dispo. Thank you very much for joining me today, John.
Hey, thanks for having me. Glad to be on your show.
Before we get started, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. You can also help us out a lot by leaving the podcast a positive review on whatever platform you use. If you want to email the podcast, you can reach me at david@cannabisequipmentnews.com with email the podcast in the subject line. You can also subscribe to our daily newsletter. Make sure you get it delivered to your inbox first. John, I always like to start with a little bit of background. How did you find yourself in cannabis packaging?
Well, I've always been in cannabis since my high school days and on into my young adulthood. It was a way that I found myself supplementing my income, to be honest with you. And when cannabis became a legal format for commercial sale, my partner and I did not actually get a license in Arizona through the lottery process. It was a very limited process. And when we didn't find that opportunity, we found that there was easily an opportunity to be in an ancillary business facing the cannabis industry. And so packaging seemed to be the most effective way for us to get there. At the end of the day, every bit of cannabis has to leave a dispensary in compliant packaging. And so learning and understanding those rules led us to having quite a bit of success nationwide, really, in the cannabis industry as it stands today.
You know, sometimes people that have a history in that legacy market aren't as eager to make the transition. For you, why did you want to get onto the legal side?
Well, I've been in business for myself since I was just out of high school. I've never had a W-2 that wasn't from a business that was my own. And so I've been in both the legacy market and in business for myself and traditional businesses for quite a long time. So the opportunity to transition my legacy business into a traditional operational business that is facing the legal marketplace makes all the sense to me. It takes all the risk out and keeps me in a place of serving the community that I love the most.
What was that transition like?
Well, it was eye-opening, actually, because the first time in my life where I was not occupying my afternoons and evenings and weekends with servicing my clients came with transitioning into the traditional marketplace, now the legal marketplace for cannabis. And so it gave me back my evenings and weekends, to be honest with you.
When did you realize that you had that entrepreneurial spirit?
When I was 13 years old, my grandfather bought a junked out Ford 8N tractor for me. And I spent my summer while I was working at our implement shop and calling auction alongside him, rebuilding that tractor. And at the end of the summer, I was able to sell that tractor for $3,250. And so that was my summer bonus. And I realized at that point that if you put your hands on something and you work hard, you can earn a really nice income. And so from that point forward, I have always been interested in working for myself.
What kind of tractor was it?
It's a Ford 8N tractor. So it's a small cub tractor that you would pull a small mower or, just work your hayfield with.
Okay. My family bleeds Alice orange, so that's why I ask.
Yeah, Alice Chalmers is a great tractor. We were a Massey and Ford family ourselves.
Okay. It was, I'm from Wisconsin, and my grandfather used to work at the old Alice plant, so that's where that kind of comes from.
That's all. They're beautiful tractors. They really are. And I can remember restoring a number of them and having the old Alice orange paint.
Yeah. No, it's wild. It is an entire subculture I never knew existed. And the older I get, I just see how much more vast it is than what I was exposed to as a child.
Absolutely.
So, one thing, as I was going through your website, I saw a lot of different innovative things in packaging. So from your perspective, kind of what's new when it comes to cannabis packaging?
Well, I mean, today's world, cannabis packaging means vape hardware, right? That's a primary package for cannabis consumption. So a lot of new technology coming along with vape hardware and making sure that we have products that are safe for consumption, that there's no heavy metals or other issues in those. Really important. So the technology around testing has gotten significantly better, and the mandate for testing from the consumer has made its way through legislatures, and hopefully we're finding the legislatures making responsible decisions around what they require for testing. Also, compliance related to packaging itself. We have a patent now on a fully sustainable paper tube with a recyclable, biodegradable paper tube and a recyclable plastic lid that is changing the game as well. We're finding ourselves making millions, I mean tens of millions, hundreds of millions of pieces of waste in packaging. And so finding ways to make those sustainable and to add less waste to the planet is a goal of ours at DISPO, I know, and many of our competitors as well. So there's all kinds of new technology, and then right into packaging the goods themselves. The machines now that are operational in many of the facilities around the country that are creating real efficiencies are going to drive the cost down for consumers. So big machines that are pushing both live flower cannabis products, concentrates and edibles into packages, sealing them, creating food grade situations where our products are safe to use and consume and hold fresh on and stable on the shelf for the end consumer to use when they get it home to have a safe place to consume.
Now, you hit on a lot of hot button topics for our listenership there. One in particular is sustainability. So everyone out there is racing to make a sustainable product. What are you doing to make a sustainable product that is affordable to cannabis operators?
Sure. We just received our final information and patent number on our paper tube. It is fully biodegradable at your compost pile, as is the closure. The plastic lid is recyclable at your recycle bin at home. These products are intended to reduce the amount of waste that we're producing and give the consumer an opportunity to participate in that process. At the end of the day, this plastic tube is one, food grade, it is two, airtight, and three, it is a sustainable product. So we're very excited about this. That tube is roughly the same amount of money you would spend on a jar or on a pop top, the same size, that would have very dissimilar opportunities for sustainability. So similar price with ultimate opportunity to be having a sustainable product.
You said you're going through the patent process, or you already received the patents. When did you start development on that product?
That product started and completed from a concept standpoint about a year and a half ago. We have been selling those tubes for about a year, and it took us a full year to go through the vetting process and the patent process to receive our to move from patent pending to a fully patented product.
You'd also mentioned the equipment side of the business. What kind of packaging equipment are you into?
So we work with a number of packaging equipment companies. We don't sell packaging equipment. It's not really where we reside in the world. But we find a lot of success working with and knowing the specifications of the many packaging equipment companies and pieces of equipment that service our industry. So we're experts at knowing the specifications of what kind of packaging you need to have a fully functioning, operational, successful process for putting your cannabis products into packages using the efficiency of equipment.
So to that point, when you're trying to automate that process, in your opinion, what are the most ideal types of packaging for products that would give you the most streamlined business?
You know, the sophistication of the equipment these days really broadens the opportunity to have unique packaging with a different jig. You can have a different size closure. You can have a different size bag. You can have die cut bags now. So the sophistication of the equipment is great. From an efficiency standpoint, uh, jars or tubes are probably your most effective opportunity. Mylar bags that are square cut are very very good. And if you are dealing in edibles or anything that can be shrink wrapped into a film, this is probably your most efficient process out there.
You said that you work with the equipment manufacturers. What do you do on your end to sort of take out that operator error of when it comes to something as simple as loading packaging into a piece of automation equipment, and making sure that there are no issues along the way?
It's a really great question. How your packaging is packaged is a really important part of the process. And so understanding how the lift is going to come from the box where the packaging resides and into the packaging equipment process helps us to put that packaging together in its a bulk package so that it is most efficient for feeding the machine.
So, in your opinion, what's the best way to package your packaging?
It's a good question, and it's a difficult one to answer because there's so many different forms of packaging out there. We deal with literally dozens of forms of packaging, and we deal with dozens of different packaging equipment makers. And so it really takes a custom process to understanding the lift to feed the machine. And so that's why working with a company like ours that's willing to visit your facility, understand the machinery that you have, has worked with the companies that you purchased that machinery from, can then make a custom effort to make that process the most efficient possible.
Is there an opportunity there for equipment manufacturers to maybe get on the same page in terms of a little bit of standardization?
You know, it's the same thing across the cannabis industry, and you'll find this no matter what segment of the cannabis industry that you're in because of its newness. And I know it's not that new anymore, but because it also does not have federal regulation, it has state regulation that is disparate across the country. There are always going to be areas where standardization would help, but the lack of organization of our industry uh, it disables the energy that goes into standardization. Where we have disparate compliance for packaging across the country. We have different packaging requirements, different testing requirements. All of these things change the dynamics of how things work in the packaging room of facilities across the country.
How do you make sure to stay on top of all those different regulations just to make sure that your clients aren't falling out of compliance?
Well, we are not attorneys. David, I would love to tell you, we do quite a lot of business and a lot of work to understand the compliance and regulations in all of the marketplaces which we do business. And in fact, I've spent many hours in front of state legislators and regulators talking to them about what is reasonable and responsible related to compliance. That does not mean that we know everything about compliance everywhere there is legal cannabis, but we are a good resource to get you started on your path. Every organization should lean heavily on their legal counsel to know that they are performing or producing legally compliant packages for the shelf and their dispensaries in their states.
Because you do business across multiple markets, multiple states, in your opinion, what state is getting it the most right when it comes to packaging and labeling requirements?
Well, that's a difficult thing to say. There's many states that are doing it well. There are many states that are doing it very poorly. The issue really isn't who's doing it best. It's getting consistency across the board. Now we have more and more organizations that are operating in multiple states. And so what makes it really difficult and inefficient is when we have to create the same package, but with different degrees of compliance. And so what we're doing wrong is missing on the opportunity to operate with consistent rules across one state to another. And so there are good states, there are good rules. You know, our business operates its headquarters from Arizona. The rules there are really pretty fair. In other states that are requiring primary, secondary, and tertiary packaging to be child resistant is overbroad. We have to lean on the responsibility of the person who's consuming the product more so than the maker of the product. And in addition to the maker of the product's responsibilities, what is our responsibility to the planet for producing less packaging? The more child resistant and compliant packaging required to go around a package, the more waste we're creating and producing and putting into the world.
Now, I feel like you just answered this for me, but I wanted to ask you, when it comes to those rules, reasonable and unreasonable, what's the most unreasonable rule that you've run into? Is it that tertiary packaging?
So it's not necessarily the tertiary packaging. I think actually the tertiary packaging, meaning your exit bag, in most cases, is the best place to have the package be child resistant, because it can protect all of the products that you purchased all at one time, and it gives you a nice encasement for those products at your home if you don't have a safe place to keep them otherwise. But the most unreasonable regulation that I've ever run into, it is no longer in place, but in a state in the middle Northwest, there were rules that you had to actually produce the package, send it to the state. The state would inspect the package and then approve or disapprove the ability for that package to go into the marketplace. And if you know anything about packaging and minimum order quantities, people were having to produce tens of thousands of pieces of packages and just sit and hope that that package would be approved by the state.
Yeah, definitely unreasonable. I also heard that you have a bit of expertise when it comes to how these ancillary companies can drive growth in the cannabis industry. How's that happening from your perspective?
It's the dream, really, for any business, I think, to have a strong infrastructure of passionate characters that can support your business. You know, supporting characters, I like to call them, and so our business is one of those. We are ancillary to the cannabis industry. We have intentionally kept ourselves from being a plant touching organization so that we don't have any ability or desire whatsoever to compete with our own customers. We are here specifically to support the growth of the business that we serve. And there's many other businesses out there like that. We specifically face the cannabis industry. We don't serve anybody else. There are accountants, there are attorneys, there are designers for your interior. There are POS companies that are running your points of sale. These organizations are out there doing what they do as experts in the business that they're doing it in. And you, as a cannabis company, should be focused on making awesome products, marketing them to the right consumers, getting your products on the shelves, and selling cannabis. And when you lean on the ancillary community that's there, the infrastructure that has developed around this industry, you will find yourself having greater success than your competitors who are trying to do it all.
We have, as a nation, seen quite a few logistics and supply chain issues pop up, particularly in this last quarter. Hurricane Milton, the port strike. You know, when your customers run into these logistics and supply chain issues, what can you do to kind of help them stay up and running?
Well, we produce packaging all over the planet. You know, we produce quite a lot of it here in the United States, but we also obviously produce packaging overseas in China. And facts are organizations like ours are the pathway to protecting your supply chain and ensuring that you don't see a disruption in your product on the shelf. We have a container of goods landing at our facility once or twice a week, every week. And so we don't ever move an individual organization's goods on a single container. We bust that up over a number of containers so that we know whether there's a disruption with one or another, that their product is going to safely arrive in high quality shape at a reasonable rate on the timeline that we promised it. And we are a packaging company, but just as much as a packaging company, we are a supply chain and logistics company. 50% of our business is making sure things get to us on time and to the customer in the quality that they expected on the timeline that they expected.
Do you have domestic manufacturing operations?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. We produce quite a lot of our plastic goods here in the United States, as well as a lot of our paper goods. There are lots of operational deficiencies for some of the packaging that's used for cannabis in the United States. That infrastructure is growing, which is fantastic. The more business we can do in the United States, the more we want to do in the United States. But at the end of the day, some of the products that we use in cannabis for packaging, there's a massive deficiency in ability to produce at a rate necessary to support this industry's growth.
What are some of those specific operational deficiencies?
Well, Mylar bags is a great example. There's either really large manufacturers that want minimum order quantities in the 500,000 to million piece range, which does not serve our industry well, or really small operations that do digital printing and their runs are most efficient in the 1 to 5,000 piece range. The typical 50 to 500,000 piece range, there's very limited manufacturing possible in the United States right now. And so most of that manufacturing does get done in China. It gets done very effectively and frankly faster and with better quality than what we see in the United States right now.
I also read that you kind of go out of your way to help startup operators get off the ground. What are some of the things that are unique to Dispo that help these fledgling cannabis operators?
Well, we all start somewhere. And I can remember a customer some years ago. This is very early in our operation. We had a minimum order on chipboard boxes for 3,000 pieces. And they said, well, how the hell are we going to get to 3,000 pieces? They couldn't get to 3,000 pieces in their minds. Well, within a year and a half of operating and doing business with and working with them, they were ordering 500,000 jars a quarter from us. And they grew their business successfully. We've seen hundreds, maybe thousands of businesses. We've created over 1,000 brands at Dispo. So we've seen thousands of businesses go from 0 to 1 million or 0 to goodbye. And we've seen the mistakes that they've made. We've seen how the industry treats them. We've seen how the mistakes or the opportunities that they've driven home have risen or diminished their business opportunity. And so we answer all the questions that we're asked. We don't come into anybody's business and act like we know what we're doing. We come into their business, and if they start asking questions, we answer them. And those businesses tend to thrive when they ask all the right questions, when they listen to the advice, and then they apply it to their business and their operation and their culture. Man, that's what works. And we're as consultative as our customers want us to be.
What are some of those mistakes that, let's say, might be red flags?
Well, one, spending money that really belongs to the IRS. Understanding the tax implications of this industry and 280E and how it impacts each business differently, and how to set up your organization. Using ancillary businesses effectively is a way that you can mitigate issues. You can eliminate a lot of the problems that many companies find by adequately leveraging the infrastructure and the ancillary businesses that have developed around cannabis, including your equipment companies and most of your audience here. These are guys that can come in and create efficiencies that you would never have. You have overemployment and be under efficient, and you're going to miss the opportunity for success in this industry all day.
You had mentioned initially that you were interested in being on the plant touching side of the business. Is there still a part of you that wants that in some way, maybe as a side hustle?
Well, we've grown a significant business in Dispo, and it employs around 40 people and services hundreds of organizations. And it is as deeply ingrained in the fabric of the cannabis community as any other business could be. And so, no, I think what we're doing is exactly where we should be, and we do it well. We do it with passion, and we do it with real interest in the success of our customers, and we do it mostly with interest in the end consumer having a great experience with the product that they've paid quite a lot of dollars to consume.
When you say that you've helped thousands of brands kind of get off the ground, what is that like during that initial push? I mean, when you see the packaging come through, do you have, after helping so many different clients, do you have a good barometer of who might make it or not, just based off of what they're doing with their packaging?
Well, for sure. The organization that comes to us and says, "Okay, we've harvested, and I've got 1,000 pounds of cured marijuana. Now give me packaging." I can see that they probably don't have their ducks in a row, so to speak. And so, for sure, there's ways that we can tell, but for the most part, the folks that come to this industry are coming to it with passion, and that passion will get them through. And so, finding ways to help them and give them good advice and be a partner to them rather than just using them to make another deal is how we can help them sometimes miss the mistake that would have taken them down.
One thing that has always troubled me with this industry is packaging that looks either like other popular consumer items or candy. When will the cannabis industry finally steer away from that type of packaging?
Well, the states are doing a good job to eliminate that. In fact, we've had organizations in the past come to us and want to produce packaging that simply just doesn't meet our standard for what is appropriate or ethical in the marketplace. And so we've turned away business, frankly, that we could have had because it didn't meet our ethical standard. The facts are this: if you want to have a strong brand that is going to be successful for a long time, then have a strong brand that's going to be successful for a long time. If it looks like Fruity Pebbles or Starburst, and you're trying to engage the community through someone else's good hard work of developing a brand, you're doing it wrong. And it's just as easy to think creatively and work with teams like ours to come up with a brand that's strong, recognizable. And the way that you leverage a strong and recognizable brand for success is not by imitating somebody else's brand. It's by having a damn good product inside of that really beautiful package. That's how you gain loyalty. Something that's recognizable can only get you through the door, but having a good product inside that package is what's going to keep you in the house.
When it comes to having a damn good product, you have relationships with thousands of companies out in the industry. Is there, or are there one or two in particular that are your favorite?
That's a great question. So I am a consumer of all things cannabis. I consume concentrates, flower, and I also consume edibles. There have been many products over the years that have caught my attention. Strain wise, really into the indica heavy hybrids. And probably my favorite flower strain on the planet is cat piss. I know it's a wild name, but it's on favorites list. Right now, I've got some garlic breath uh, from Big Sky Buds here in Montana. I'm in Montana right now. Probably tell by my puffy jacket. Um, their garlic breath right now is kind of kicking my butt. It's really good. But no, there are so many good brands. My good friends at the Mint dispensary in Arizona, they put a whole ass kitchen where they will make you a cheeseburger or a pizza and put concentrates on it, so you can make your own edibles. There's all kinds of things out there that would tickle your fancy. But I think the innovative, the new products, the fun stuff that's out there always catches my attention, and it's hard to determine whose flower is better than this flower. There's a lot of good product out there, really great operators, great manufacturers of concentrates and edibles. So uh, if you're an avid consumer like me, go to your dispensary and shop and find the things that trip your trigger. I know there's a lot of them out there that trip mine.
You mentioned the importance of having being community minded and having a focus on the local area. What are some of the things that you do when it comes to community outreach that have either been successful in terms of getting your name out there or just the greater good?
Well, everything that we do is focused on helping to grow our business and grow the industry that it serves. And to discount that would be a disservice to the advocacy that we do. Uh, we are members of the state associations in every state that we do business in. We volunteer our time and energy and effort to their legislative efforts or local government efforts to expand the opportunity for access to cannabis for consumers. We advocate for safe and compliant packaging and safe and compliant testing for the cannabis product. It is the differentiator for the legal cannabis market to what is now no longer the legacy market and is a black market. And so we are heavily focused on creating better opportunities for our government to understand the value of cannabis to its own greater good. And we've been doing that from the beginning. It's been a focus of ours, and I think our customers, the customers that do appreciate that, are the customers that stick with us for the long term and have for now many years.
Being involved on the legislative side of the business, how do you feel about rescheduling? How do you feel about where we are in regards to a regulatory landscape?
Yeah, it's a tough subject, right? Because the rescheduling or getting some federal regulation around this, it opens the door to uh, much larger corporations, the Anheuser-Busch's of the world, the pharmaceutical companies that are interested in our industry. It opens doors that are somewhat of a threat to the local mom and pop shops and organizations and businesses that really this industry thrives on today. And so it also brings greater competition to our company from much larger packaging organizations than we are. So there's a threat, but there's also an opportunity. And depending on how you've established your own self in this industry and your own brand, we've been given quite a lot of time as entrepreneurs, as small business owners, to set ourselves up for success through the transition. And that transition will happen, but make no mistake about it, that transition is going to take years of time. It won't take months of time. We'll have 3, 4, 5 legislative sessions, congressional sessions, before the definitions are rewritten that allow a federal commercialization, which would allow these big public organizations, publicly traded organizations, to really participate effectively in the cannabis industry. So we still have time to build and prepare ourselves for the inevitable legalization of cannabis. But it will happen, and it should, and it needs to happen, because right now the undue tax burden of 280E is crushing many businesses. And so looking forward to seeing a better process for taxation of our industry for sure.
I know it's rather nebulous, but if you had to put a number on it, how many years away are we from federal legalization?
You're right. It's not a number that you can pin down. This upcoming election has, I think, fairly significant implications on that. Um, the 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 process will take several years, 3 to 5. If some action were to be taken between now and the end of the year, probably 3 to 5 years. If action gets taken 2 years from now, 5 to 7 years, right? It really is hard to pin that down, and there's a lot of eager folks out there to see federal regulation. And there's a lot of eager people to keep it just the way it is. And I understand both sides of that story. We have customers on both sides of that story. And we as a company are impacted on both sides of that story. So I keep my opinion on that pretty wide open. I see the benefit in both sides of it.
Well, John, I really do appreciate you taking the time today. But before we get out of here, is there anything else that you want to make sure the Cannabis Equipment News audience either knows about yourself or your work at DISPO?
I would just say I think we hit on it. Our company leans on its approach to advocacy and relationships and partnership with our customers to find its success. We serve probably somewhere around 1% of the industry that we could be serving at DISPO, and it has built quite a large business. So thank you, cannabis industry, for giving us a place to survive and thrive and be. And look forward to doing business with you if you have a chance to give us a call.
Well, I really think it's exciting, just the number of companies you've worked with that you basically were able to see the prototypes. And like you said, sometimes you only make the prototype, but then sometimes you wind up making millions more pieces for them in terms of packaging. And that watching that growth, there has to be a little bit of pride in that.
It is. It's a lot of joy, really, and we've built lifelong relationships and friendships with people through the years, and there's a lot of happiness and joy that goes around our place. It's a part of our culture at DISPO is really living the process and living our culture and living our core values, and taking pride in the end product, because that end product is going to end up in somebody's home. And we've produced hundreds of millions of packages, and commonly we'll tell people that means we've produced hundreds of millions of smiles.
Well, John, thank you again for taking the time today. I really do appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much, David. I appreciate the time and the energy, and look forward to hopefully catching up with you again.
Before we get out of here, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. You can also help us out a lot by leaving the podcast a positive review on whatever platform you use. If you want to email the podcast, you can reach me at david@cannabisequipmentnews.com with email the podcast in the subject line. You could also subscribe to our daily newsletter. Make sure you get it delivered to your inbox first. For John Hartsell, co-founder of DISPO, I'm David Manti. This is the Cannabis Equipment News Podcast, and we will see you next week.
Welcome to the Cannabis Equipment News Podcast.